Hi there, and welcome to the Multiply You podcast, where we showcase top experts in their space and reveal all the secrets you need to know to multiply you.
Hey everybody, happy December 1st. Austin Clark here, host of the Multiply You podcast. I've got another amazing guest on this week. Was so glad to be able to become acquainted with him just in the last 10 days or so. And that is Josh Kim. I'll introduce him here in just a moment. And I think that anyone that may be struggling with capital, funding, financing for whatever it is that they might need for their small business, which I know is potentially a lot of people right now, Josh is your guy. He's got a lot of really valuable information. This episode is brought to you by Moxie Pest Control. And we are really excited and feel very fortunate and frankly, just grateful and blessed that we have been growing. And so there's been so many things the last year and a half that have been going on with businesses where they've struggled or shut down, or they're just not in business anymore. And we fortunately have not had that experience. It's been the opposite. And we're very, very grateful for that. So we're growing, we're continuing to grow. Part of the way that we do that is via acquisition. And so if there's anyone out there that's listening that specifically in Phoenix has a pest control company that is looking or thinking about that next chapter, we would love to be able to talk. We want it to be a reputable brand, 3, 4, 5+ trucks on the road. We've done a handful of deals just in the recent couple of years, and we're really, really excited to be able to do more. The market is hot right now, and so valuations have never been higher, and with some of the looming tax implications as far as capital gains and those sorts of things go, now is a really, really good time to be able to do that. So I'd love to be able to talk. You can call or text me directly, 480-254-9730. Now, Josh Kim, starting from nothing, Josh Kim had a desire to purchase a small business. So you've been an entrepreneur, Josh, since you can remember and forever. One of the things that stood out in your bio to me is that, at the age of just 19, you were still a teenager. You were able to secure $1 million plus SBA loan. That was without friends. That was without family. That was without any inside connection at the bank or, family members, friends on the country club. You just went out and did that. You did that and then purchased your first business. After you did that, you were able to very quickly secure another couple of SBA loans, totaling quite a bit more than the first loan. And you bought 2 more businesses. And so that's kind of been your thing. And I think that in this process, you found an opportunity to be able to say, my gosh, there's a lot of businesses and business owners out there that are in dire need of this capital to be able to grow or pay employees or whatever else. And people have either had bad experiences or they've got started on the paperwork and said, forget that. Or they've kind of bought into some of the urban legends, if you will, of SBA lending and financing. And so I'm excited for you to be able to put some of those to rest. And then, finally, you've just demystified what most people think about SBA and SBA spending. And so I'm excited to be able to talk to you. But welcome to the show, Josh. Good morning. How are you doing today?
Great. Glad to be on. Glad to chat with you.
So let's kind of start. At the very beginning, what's a little bit of your history? What's a little bit of your story? One of the first questions I've got, and after a little bit of your background, I would love to know, what possessed you at an early age? And then, how did you get $1 million plus SBA loan as a 19-year-old with none of those connections? But let's hear some of the backstory first.
Yeah. So I had just various small entrepreneurial ventures prior to wanting to get into the space of acquisitions. And, I was fortunate enough to be mentored by a guy who's done a lot of acquisitions, both larger and smaller ones. So I learned from him, at a pretty young age. Got to meet him at about 17, right before I turned 18 years old. And I was able to glean a lot of knowledge from him. His name is Dan Pena. For folks in the audience, a couple of them I'm sure will have heard the name before. So we just have to, I learned from him on what you have to do as far as setting up a business acquisition. And so I went out, I had to network a lot, talk to a lot of people, talk to a lot of banks, find a couple of businesses that might be good candidates, drill down, find one good one. And, ultimately went ahead and, got that one financed. So That's a little bit about my background and kind of what I did. The business I bought was in the healthcare space. For anyone that was wondering, I bought 3 businesses in the home health and hospice segment. It's a very difficult very difficult industry to own a business in, which is kind of why I transitioned out and have been focusing on other things. But yeah, that's a little bit about my background and kind of what I have. How I got into it. I learned about it, and I was just very keen on getting involved. I did have to bring someone on who had some industry experience because I obviously, when the bank is looking at an approval of a loan, one of the things they're looking at is what kind of experience you have. I didn't have any experience at 19 years old for the healthcare space. So I did bring a partner in who was an operational partner, who's not a financial partner. And, I had to basically raise the investor down payment for the 10% down to buy the business. But that is my background in short on, kind of the whole process of what I was able to get done.
So Dan Pena, I'm relatively familiar with some of his stuff. Very polarizing. What what was your favorite part about being mentored or working with Dan?
I think my favorite part was just the directness. I think he rubs a lot of people the wrong way because they it's like the scene from the movie. You want the truth, you can't handle the truth. He's very much that guy who's just dumping all of the facts right in your face, right? Hey, here's the facts. Here's what you need. And, a lot of people are polarized by that because they don't necessarily want all the facts. Sometimes the facts are ones that they don't want to hear. So anyway, that's just my take on Dan Pena. I think that he has a lot of value in the information that he conveys. A lot of people don't like his delivery style, but I think if they took the time to understand the underlying parts of what he was saying, they would realize he has a lot of really good points.
Awesome. So you've been an entrepreneur forever. You knew that you wanted to, in your mid to late teen years, buy a business. You probably didn't have tons of money to be able to do that. What was the process like securing your first SBA loan? Did you buy into some of the things that most business owners today buy into that you'll soon kind of debunk and demystify for us? But what was that process like for you? Why did you turn to SBA rather than family money, or other ways to be able to access capital?
Yeah, so I guess I'll address the questions in the order you asked them. I didn't really have a bunch of preconceived notions about how it worked. I think that was the thing that was different about me, primarily because I was younger. I didn't have, I hadn't been taught the wrong things by running a business for 4 years and been told all these different things about how banks work or about how banks don't work. I just kind of figured, hey, there's money that's being lent out for business acquisitions through these SBA 7A loans. There's banks loaning out, $20 to $30 billion a year, for business acquisitions or these other kind of things. There has to be some way to make this happen. And so I didn't have as many preconceived notions about it, but I did have to navigate a lot of bad information. Part of the reason that my consultancy with the loan business is, has gotten a lot of interest from people is because, hey, and I'll tell you this, we just had a guy pretty recently before we started the podcast. I was telling you about him. He had a pest control acquisition, a pest control business acquisition that he was working on, and he had been getting yanked around by his bank. He banked at US Bank for years, and their SBA people had told him for like 4 months, hey, we can do this, we can do this, we can do this. And just, they unfortunately were not able to pull through. And so I did have to navigate some of the misinformation out there about, oh, well, here are the rules, or here's how it works, or here's how it doesn't work. And a lot of times those were people just telling me how it worked at their bank, not necessarily how the program worked and how it could work at other banks. And so to some degree, yes. In many degrees, no, I hadn't subscribed to a lot of these schools of thought about how things had to be or whatever. And I think partially that was what allowed me to succeed with it, because, if I had had these preconceived notions about, hey, this is how it works, I probably would have never gone that route. To your other question, why not have gone, some other route? It's very difficult to raise just $1 million, right? If you have a $50 million deal, there's a much wider base of investors you can approach, because that's a big enough deal to where it's not that hard to find the capital for it. But as you start kind of going down to smaller deals, it gets more difficult, because some of these more like family office types or these debt funds, they're just not going to cut a check for $1 million for a business acquisition. It's just not what they do. They needed 10 to 50, yeah, no problem. But below a certain dollar amount, it's just very difficult to find a group that can accommodate, which is the power of, and in my opinion, what is one of the biggest benefits of the SBA 70 program is you have, the government is guaranteeing 75% of these loans, or 75% of the loan that the bank is giving out. And so therefore the bank is more incentivized to make loans to these smaller businesses that would otherwise get glossed over. And that was kind of the whole premise they had when they came up with these programs is, hey, smaller businesses are not going to get the correct financial resources that they, really deserve if they don't have the right folks, at their helm. So that's kind of, why I didn't go that route, because really there weren't many other options for it.
Well, and most small businesses aren't doing 20, 30, $40 million in annual revenue. They're doing $500,000, $1 million, $2 million or $5 million in total annual revenue and below. And so there needs to be a source for them to be able to secure capital like that. So there's a lot of people listening. Some have done SBA lending and loans. Most haven't. If someone is looking to be able to secure an SBA loan, where would you recommend they start? How do they do that? Whether it's today or if they want to get a loan in a year for whatever it might be, what are some of the things that they can start to do now to prepare to receive financing?
Yeah, so I'll start with what can you do to prepare? So regardless of when you're going to go ahead and apply for one of these loans, the biggest thing you can do is be organized. And frankly, it's the biggest, bane of our existence with the consulting business is helping business owners that aren't organized, because, the checklist from the bank is going to pretty much be the same regardless of, what kind of business you have or what the purpose is, right? There might be a couple of extra boxes on the checklist, depending on if it's a real estate acquisition or a partner buyout or whatever. But the underlying documents they need, as far as financial documents, they're all going to be the same: tax returns, profit and loss statements, balance sheets, etc. If you can't produce those, then the bank can't take the file and submit it to underwriting, right? And so that's the biggest thing that I tell people is you need to be organized. And so a lot of business owners, they're spinning too many plates to be organized. And so what I tell them is, hey, if you're not organized today and you want to be organized, 6 months down the road to be able to get this loan, you need to be able to go out and get a good CPA, a good bookkeeper who can help you keep that in order. Because frankly, most business owners, their time is not best spent in doing the bookkeeping. And so it confuses me sometimes why they would put that on themselves to do all that work if they don't have, the requisite time or skill to do it. So the biggest thing is definitely get your books in order. And if you don't have them in order, get someone who can help you put them in order, because it's going to be impossible to get through the underwriting process if you can't, produce those documents in an organized fashion. The other thing I would say too, just more long-term planning and just more of a general comment to, to business owners that are wanting to leverage financing down the road. A lot of what is taught by your accountant, your tax planner, is to write off everything you possibly can, right? And that makes sense, right? Why would you pay taxes on income in your business if you could find other deductions to write off against it? Well, that's great for taxes, but it's terrible for going to the bank and getting financing, because the first thing the bank is going to do when they look at your business is they're going to look at your tax return. They're going to look at that first page and say, go straight to the bottom. What is the net income? And if there's a negative there, you're going to have a problem, because they're going to say, hey, there's negative cash from this business. How are we going to finance it? Now, they obviously can take into account stuff like, one-time expenses, like, hey, I bought a building. I wrote off that building. Or I bought a bunch of equipment. I wrote it off in 1 year. Okay. That's accelerated depreciation. They can add that back. They'll see that on the cash flow. I had depreciation against real estate or other equipment. They'll understand that. But if you consistently year over year, you parse that stuff out, you're not showing any profit on your tax returns, it's going to make it very hard for them to underwrite it, right? So that's one of the biggest things that I tell people is you can't write everything off as much as you would like to. It's not doable, right? So the other thing I would say, just as a whole, you need to have a not very specific, but you need to have a specific breakdown of what you're going to use the money for. Because we see business owners come through, hey, I need $10 million. Okay, what for? And then they're not really able to fully quantify it. When you go to these lenders, yeah, they just want the money. And so unfortunately that doesn't work, not because, it's not sensible, but what you have to realize is these banks, they're participating with a government program. And the SBA provides guidelines to them of what they need to do in underwriting. And one of the main things is you need to have a justified use of the funds. You can't just say, hey, I need $1 million to have $1 million. Hey, even if your business can actually cash flow it, you need to be able to demonstrate what you're going to use the money for and why you. And so that's the other thing that a lot of times business owners don't really have figured out. They say, well, hey, I need about $500,000. And when you drill into it, okay, well, what do you need it for? Well, I need this much for this and this much for this. Okay, well, that only counts for 200 grand. Why do you need the other 300? They can't really come up with a good answer, right? And so, not to say you can't ask for, $100,000, $200,000 of general working capital in your business, just to have, extra money around for operating. But, you get the point. If you can't justify it to the bank, it's going to be hard for them to sign off giving it to you because those are the guidelines that they have to comply with according to, the SBA.
So there was a lot there, and thank you. The three big things that I heard was: one, get organized, get your finances in order; two, plan, and by planning, you were saying, look, there needs to be some income, or if there's not, then like some reasonable explanation for the company either running a loss or showing very low net income, and so perhaps consider not writing everything off. And then third and finally is to be able to get linked with someone that is able to help you to be able to do that. What about or finally, and then have a plan for the money. So while everyone might want access to $10 million, you need to be able to have specific places and pieces where that's going. I had a friend of a friend recently. He secured a $500,000 SBA loan. The interest rate was like near nothing. And so I'd love for you to be able to speak for a moment, Josh, if you don't mind. Talk to us about interest rates. And then before the call and episode started, I think that you said just this last year, maybe it was over the last couple of years, SBA lending is up 50% from 30 million to 45 million. And so talk to us about interest rates. Money's really cheap right now. And then why is lending up, and what do you see the next year or two looking like?
Yeah. So what I would say is, a couple things. So the $500,000 loan your friend got, was that one of the disaster loans, the EIDL loans, or did you get it from a bank?
I believe it was from a bank. Yeah, I don't think it was EIDL.
Okay. Yeah. So there is a little bit of confusion there, because some people say, hey, well, the EIDL loans are only 3.75%. Why are the SBA 7A loans 5 to 6%? Well, the EIDL loans are like literally a once in a millennia thing. There's never going to be this.
It'll never happen again. Hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. Yeah. If it happens, if it happens again, we have bigger problems. But just to address the rate and term. So there's two main SBA programs, like flagship programs. The main one I talk about is the 7A program, because that's the most robust one. You can use it for pretty much everything. The 504 program is also there, but that's for real estate only. And so that's a little bit more niche. And I usually don't go too much into detail on that because most people who are running a business, they're more concerned with getting capital for the business, not just for the business to buy a piece of real estate, right? So the 7A loan, it'll be a 10 to 25-year term. You can use the 7A to buy real estate as well. If you're buying real estate, that's when the term will go up to 25 years. Most of the time, if it's for a business acquisition, partner buyout, or anything that doesn't involve real estate, you're going to be looking at a 10-year term. The maximum interest rate right now is 6%. And just so people understand the importance of that, last year, the actual cost of inflation was estimated to be about 6%, possibly higher, more likely higher. And so when you're getting a loan at 6%, and mind you, that is the cap that is set by the SBA. A bank cannot charge you more than 6% because of how the interest rates are calculated for SBA loans. It's capped at 6%. So you're getting a loan at 6% and inflation is 6%. You're basically borrowing the money for free, because as you pay back the loan over time, the value of that dollar is slipping. And so you're paying back the loan with dollars that are cheaper than what you borrowed it at. So even though you are technically paying interest on it, you're actually really not, because of how inflation works. So that's just one thing I'll throw out there. The reason lending volume, before we got on the episode, I did mention that lending volume has jumped. So last fiscal year, the fiscal year that just closed out, because the SBA's fiscal year runs from October to end of September, their lending volume for last year between the 7A and 504 program was $45 billion. The year prior to that, the fiscal year prior to that, it was about 30 billion. And it was consistently, 28, 29, 28, $30 billion in that range, but it jumped a whole 50% in 1 year, even while COVID was going on. Right. So even though we had complete deadlock months where banks weren't lending any money except, the COVID relief money, lending volume still jumped by 50%. And that says something. It means that next year it's going to be even higher. Right. So the value, or I guess the point that's being conveyed there is that there's a tremendous demand for capital on the part of small businesses across the country, and that demand is only going to increase as kind of we come out of this, this curve of COVID, right? So that's really where I see the value in kind of helping business owners, or where our opportunity lies, kind of more specifically with my business, kind of what we do is because you have this huge demographic of business owners who need the money, and they just got to find out where to get it. And I think a lot of the business owners out there, they just don't have the right connections with banks. And partly why I started this business is because I saw that a lot of businesses had issues just getting capital out of the just out of the PPP loans, right? And it's like, if you can't get loans from the banks that are 100% guaranteed by the government, heaven forbid you need to actually get money. So anyway, that's a little bit of commentary on the lending volume. I think it's going to go up even more. All the numbers that we have thus far, being reported by the SBA are indicating that, just the lending volume is going to continue to go up just with the flagship programs entirely outside of the, their disaster relief programs, which end at the end of the month.
So let's talk a little bit about your company, 7A Accelerator. I mean, how long has it been around? It's a consulting firm where you're helping small business owners secure these types of loans, and probably have other service offerings or segments to be able to assist businesses grow. What have been some defining points in this business for you? And I mean, I guess just what advice in the current climate do you have for other business owners?
Well, I think, and I can definitely say I'm guilty of this myself. We get so stuck in focusing on other parts of the business, we neglect to look at kind of the 3, 6, 12, 24-month picture of like, hey, we need to plan now for capital needs tomorrow, right? Because these SBA loans, it's not like they happen overnight. You can get merchant cash advance loans overnight, but I tell people getting financing, it's like a 3-legged stool, and you can only pick 2 legs. You can have good, fast, or cheap. And so you can have good and you can have fast, but it's not going to be cheap, so if you want cheap, something that's going to be good and cheap, it's unfortunately not going to be the fastest process. And that's what the SBA loan is. A lot of people think, oh, it's going to take months and months. It only takes 30 to 60 days if you know what you're doing and you have the right connections and, you're organized. But, planning ahead of time is definitely very important. That's, I think, what the biggest piece I can give to people, because we've had a lot of business owners come to us, hey, I'm growing too fast. I can't keep up with this. I'm running out of cash. I'm sinking with these highly expensive loans that are sucking, the profit out of my business that I would otherwise be able to invest in growth. Help me refinance this out as quick as possible. Right. There's a lot of that we're running into, to say the least.
Yeah, no, thank you. You mentioned some of the kind of red flags or things that will hold that process up. If you've really got things dialed in, it's a 30 to 60 day process. What's the average, timeline for funding an SBA loan? And then what are some things that will just like kill that loan from the get go, other than not having your finances in order, not being organized, not having a plan for the money?
Yeah. So I'd say it's important to distinguish between 2 loan buckets from a size perspective, right? So loans 350,000 and below, they actually have like a much more abbreviated underwriting process. And part of that was because the SBA wanted to make it easier for smaller businesses to get these loans, because they figured, hey, these businesses don't have the same resources to be financially organized and this and that. So those loans actually get done a lot quicker. I mean, we've had them get done in like 28, 29 days from application to getting funded. More typically, I tell people to budget 45 to 60 days, but we've had plenty of loans take way, way, way longer, not on any fault of our own, but, because they're not organized, or they had a delay, or they can't get a document that they need or whatever. I tell people to budget about 60 days is the typical time frame for getting it. What was the other part of your question? I know you asked about the timing and a couple of other.
Yeah, no timeline, and then like other things that could just like totally kill a deal.
Right.
Yeah.
There's a couple things I'd say that can kill a deal. I mean, one of the main things that we run into obviously is if a business just isn't showing cash flow. And I think it depends because you have business acquisitions and you have just existing businesses that want to get financing. The variables that kill one type of deal aren't really ones that apply to the others. I mean, if you're trying to buy a business, cash flow is going to be a common denominator across, whatever the deal is, right? Is there enough cash flow to service the debt, right? That's the biggest thing. So if you can answer yes, hey, that checks that box. Okay, good. The next questions are usually, is there enough industry experience around this? And this is more applying to startups and business acquisitions, because if you already have the business, you've been running it for 4 years, you obviously have enough experience to run the business, right? So, experience, not having enough experience is something that can create friction for a startup or for a business acquisition. But just because you don't have business experience in that specific space doesn't mean you can't bring in a partner who does. And just for example,
that's what you did in your
correct,
case, right?
Correct. I'll just tell you, in the nexus of pest control, the guy who got approved recently and is literally going to close any day now on his pest control acquisition, he owned a home inspection business. He didn't have any direct experience in pest control. So what he did is he brought in a partner, who was general manager at a pest control business to be his, 10% partner in the company to help run it. And so, he was the main financial backer to get the deal done. But the bank was like, hey, we're not going to do this deal unless you have some sort of person involved who is also going to, who's going to run the business, who has direct industry experience. And so they didn't make that guy be a guarantor per se. They just said, hey, you need to identify who's going to help run the business, where that industry experience is coming from, right? Another big factor that, kills deals that a lot of times that I see is personal credit. It's a lot. We actually have a really good relationship with like a credit repair consultant. So, sometimes we'll have leads come to us. They have existing businesses. They want to buy a business or whatever. Their credit score just isn't where it needs to be. 650 is about the range of where it'll need to be for the SBA lenders. So, making sure your personal credit's in a good spot. If it's not that big of a deal, we can usually go in and help with repair and consulting and, get that score up to where it needs to be in about 3 to 4 months, just depending on how much stuff there is to remove and clean up. But yeah, I mean, those are the biggest variables. I mean, if a business has good cash flow, there's a justified need of the money, kind of like we talked about before, and you have someone of good character, and that's, personal character as well as, financial character, then, it's a pretty strong case to the bank to make the loan. Obviously, if you went to jail for robbing a bank, you're going to have issues. And so that's kind of where the whole character thing comes into play. I think it goes without saying, but, character in the 5 C's of credit, that's personal character of who they are as a person, as well as how they manage their personal finances. So those are some variables that, come up that can create friction or straight up kill deals.
And so how about requirements for deals? So a lot of that was, I would imagine that those types of things kill deals 350K and above. But what additional requirements are there for SBA loans that are $350,000 and above?
So it's not that there's additional requirements, I would say. It's that, they're asking for the same stuff. It's just with the loans 350 and below, it's pretty much they pull your personal credit. A banker just checks to make sure the cash flow works, and then they just disperse the funds. Because with a lower dollar amount, they're not as concerned with, okay, what exactly are you using the money for? This and that. The potential loss to the bank is very minimal because the smaller loans are actually guaranteed at a higher rate. I think it's like 85% of a loan is guaranteed if it's 150 grand or below, which is not 350. But the checklist that you're going to get from the bank is going to be about the same. But for a loan that is above 350, there's usually just more scrutiny on it, right? Because it's a bigger dollar amount. Sometimes, and banks usually they have tiered signatures, right? So if you have a loan up to $500,000, one person can sign off on it. Up to $1 million, it's 2 people, and anything above 1 million, 1 to 5 million, it needs 3 people or a full committee at the bank to approve it, right? It just depends. So smaller loans, it's not that they necessarily are going to ask for more or less documents than, like a $500,000 loan. It's just, there's obviously going to be more questions, more scrutiny. And usually the bigger deals are ones where it's like a business acquisition or a partner buyout,
Sure.
where there's inherently going to be more documents needed. Hey, we need a copy of the partner buyout agreement. Hey, we need a copy of the real estate purchase agreement, an environmental survey, a business valuation. Just the bigger deals have more things that are needed more because of the types of deals that they are, not just because it's a bigger deal.
What Josh would you say, like, what are the schools of thoughts for repaying this loan? Do you want to borrow and keep that money in the company as long as you possibly can for the term of the deal? Do you want to have it paid back in a year? Do you want to, I mean, how do people go about doing that, and what are the schools of thought?
It really depends. And the reason I say that is because it depends on your unique financial situation. Because let's say you have a business, it's generating a lot of cash. You don't have, a lot of capex. There's not a lot of stuff you would invest that capital into for growth, right? You don't need to go build another location or buy a bunch more trucks. I guess with our audience being more home service minded, obviously as you grow, you have to make investments into, those sorts of things. But what I would say is just you have to evaluate your own company situation. If you're sitting on a ton of cash and you have more cash coming in than you can reasonably invest in growth, well, then it would be kind of silly to have a loan outstanding. But if you're in a spot where you're continually investing the money into growth, you want to keep some money around as a cushion, as a reserve, it really wouldn't make a lot of sense to prepay the loan. And just so the audience is aware, if your loan is below 15 years, you don't have any prepayment penalties to worry about. So if it's just a regular working capital loan or expansion loan, you won't have any prepayments to deal with. If it's on a piece of real estate, you'll have small prepayment penalties for the first 3 years. But in the case of this, if you got a loan 2 years ago, your business is taking off, you have nothing reasonable to invest some of this cash into to grow the business because it's just growing so fast. Well, it would be silly to be paying interest on it. Just pay it off and be done with it. Or just the other alternative school of thought is just sit on the money. Something will come up where you'll need it, and it would be better to just have it versus having to go through the loan process again and get
Sure.
that loan again. Yeah, you'll pay a few $1,000s a year extra in interest, but
But you have it.
Yeah, you have it when you need it. And also, what is your time worth? Because getting an SBA loan does take some time on behalf of the business owner.
Yeah. What as we kind of wrap this thing up, so you mentioned a mentor, Dan Pena, earlier, but who else has been, or what else has been influential in your life to be able to kind of get you to where you are today? Who do you turn to or listen to for mentorship? What books do you read? What podcasts do you listen to? What have been resources and valuable to you?
I don't really listen to a ton of podcasts or read a ton of books. Frankly, I'm so busy running around getting work done. But some of the books that I've found to be very helpful, more not as much with the financial side of things, but more just being able to see the world for what it's turning into. I'm a big fan of some of the books by Ayn Rand and George Orwell. 1984 was a very scary reread about 2 months ago because you see a lot of the crazy things that are happening in the world and just history getting rewritten over. Those are more the books that I spend my time reading. I think one of the biggest hacks I can provide for the audience is audiobooks. Get Audible and just listen to audiobooks because you're able to do a walk, cook, get other things done. Whereas reading a book, you're kind of confined to sitting and reading the pages. But what else? There is one podcast that I don't mind. When I have time, there's one by a guy named Alex Hormozy, who's a very high caliber entrepreneur who built a business in the gym consulting space. So he helps gyms as far as he owned gyms before, and then his biggest business is a company where they help gym owners with management, sales, operations, all kinds of stuff, and he's done very well with that. But he's one of those entrepreneurs that gets to the point very quickly, doesn't beat around the bush. He's not there to, he doesn't really care about your feelings. It's, hey, here's how it is. Here's what I've learned building businesses past 9 figures a year in revenue. If you don't like it, you can leave. But he's consistently providing really good quality information across all aspects of business. Like when you jump on his YouTube page, I'm more listening on the YouTube side of things versus his podcast, but he does have a podcast as well that a lot of that content gets shared back and forth on.
Josh, for all of those that are listening, what's the best way? And thank you so much. Thank you so much for being on and being able to provide a lot of this information that's just like super readily available now at many, many people's fingertips. But how do they get a hold of you? Do they call you, text you, email you? Do they go visit your website at, 7A Accelerator? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, best way to get in touch with me, would just be through our website, 7accelerator.com. If you want to reach me directly, josh@7accelerator.com is a good way to do it as well. Yeah, that would be the best way to reach out to me. If you want to ask some questions about SBA financing, or if you have a business acquisition or, a near or medium term financing need that you kind of want to get started on. I've got a team of folks. We've been doing SBA loans for quite a while. A lot of folks that have got way more gray hair than I do and have way more experience in the day-to-day getting them done than I do. But yeah, we would love to help more home service business owners. Like you mentioned when we jumped on, we got connected initially through Tommy Mel's podcast. And so we've actually got a lot of direct experience working with folks in the home service space, helping them, grow their businesses and, through getting, these loans. We've helped countless home service businesses. And so we'd love to help more. Home service businesses for the most part have all seen big upticks in demand. And so that makes it a lot easier for us to get financing when you can show the bank, hey, the business is doing a hockey stick in the upward direction, not the downward direction. So
good time to be borrowing. So
very much.
Very, very good. No, Josh, thank you again so much for being on. Everyone that's listening, thank you so much for tuning in each week. This will drop in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned, and we'll drop them every Thursday. And until then, have a great day and make it a good one. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Talk soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Multiply You podcast. You'll see us again soon when you subscribe for future episodes.